Ladies and gentlemen, Dariush Irandoost is a Zoroastrian, born in 1974 in Dushanbe. He has been into journalistic activities since he was 14, when he started presenting Tajik TV and radio programs. In 1991, he was the editor of the Tajik Radio Youths program and a political commentator of Adalat, the organ of the Tajik Democratic Party, from 1993 to 97. He was in exile, traveling in Central Asian countries, Russia, and lived in Tehran for some time. During 1995-97, he was the acting editor of Russian service in the Tehran radio, German translator for Graphic magazine, and Russian interpreter and translator for the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. During 1997-1999, he was a member of the team of Aga Khan Humanities Project for Central Asia. Dariush was recruited as a Dushanbe reporter for the BBC World Service in 1999, and since 2001, he is the Persian producer of the BBC World Service in London. Dariush will be speaking on Zoroastrian nostalgia of Tajiks. Ladies and gentlemen, Dariush Irandoost.
Good day, dear Hamkishes. I'm going to speak about my beautiful homeland, Tajikistan. Its almost intact inhabitants and their sufferings enjoy to keep the glorious fire of Asho Zarathushtra alight in their hearts and minds, and the price they have paid and the courage they have maintained for it. Undoubtedly and unfortunately, most of the people in this part of the world are not aware or not that familiar with that fair land. I would be very happy if anyone sitting in this hall would at least name a couple of great personalities of the contemporary Tajikistan or provide us with a basic knowledge of the country. I do not blame anyone for this. The stance of the contemporary world's affairs made us neglect of each other. However, things are changing for us, and Tajikistan is not behind the Iron Curtain anymore. We can come here like this, and you can go there in order to know each other better and to renew our forgotten ties. Thank you. Therefore, let me first talk about my people generally to see who Tajiks are and what Tajik, the word Tajik, means. There is no an absolute description of the name of my nation. Let me quote here another Intisar, a professor of political science in the Spring Hill College in the US, who obviously had the trouble to define the term of Tajik as well. He says, a restrictive definition of Tajik ethnicity limits the designation to the original inhabitants of Central Asia preceding the Arab conquest. According to this definition, Tajiks are defined by the use of Soghdiana, the linguistic medium used prior to the 7th century Muslim conquest. This definition is problematic because, with the exception of the small Yagnabi ethnic group in Tajikistan, no one today speaks Soghdiana. And then he goes on explaining this confusion. He says, according to a broader definition of Tajik ethnicity used in recent decades, any Tajik speaker is regarded as a Tajik. The main problem with this definition is that Tajiki is a Persian language, which would make any Persian speaker, such as those from Iran or Afghanistan, a Tajik as well. By the same token, this standard would exclude the inhabitants of the Pamirs region from being Tajiks, because they speak different languages. Historically diverse populations with varied ethnic backgrounds had spoken Persian, which was the administrative language of Iranians and many non-Iranians, like, for example, Hazarajat in Afghanistan. They're non-Iranian, but they speak Persian. It would be erroneous to attribute a distinct Tajik identity based on linguistic affinity. Okay, sorry. Perhaps I'm speaking too fast, and I've noticed that I have to speak this slower. I'll try to do that. According to Professor Entisar, in recent years, some Western and Russian scholars have sought to construct a Tajik identity based on a combination of language and religion. According to this concept, a Tajik is any Sunni Muslim Persian speaker. This definition helps to distinguish Iran's predominantly Shiite inhabitants from their Persian-speaking counterparts in Tajikistan. But it fails to pose a clear and cohesive definition of Tajik ethnic identity. Some 8 million people in Afghanistan fit this definition of Tajik identity, but have shown little inclination to identify with their brethren to the north particularly. In 1911, the writers of Encyclopedia Britannica gave the following definition to the word of Tajik. The name itself, which means Tajik, originally occurs in the Pahlavi writings, and it is explained to mean first the Arabs in general, and then their descendants born in Persia and elsewhere out of Arabia, and lastly the Persians in general and their descendants born in Turkestan and elsewhere out of Persia. Tajik thus came to be the collective name of all communities of Iranian stock and Persian speech wherever found in Central Asia. But even this definition does not match realities, since there are some examples of non-Central Asian and non-Afghan Persian speakers considering themselves Tajik. Saadi Shirazi, the great medieval poet of Persia based in Shiraz, nowadays southwest Iran, says, "Shayad ke be padeshah beguyand Turke to bericht khune Tajik," which means perhaps they would say to the Shah that your Turk has poured Tajik's blood. By Turk or Turkish, he means his beloved, as all medieval Persian poets. And by Tajik, he means himself as a Persian. Or Jalaluddin Rumi of Balkh recited the following verse. It says, "Yek hamle vo yek hamle, shab amad o tariki, Turki kon o chosti kon, ni sosti o Tajiki." The last line means be as agile as a Turk rather than mild as a Tajik. Noticeably, we cannot find even a single proper example of using the terms of Turko-Irani, Turkish and Iranian, or Turko-Fars, Turkish-Persian, in the medieval texts. This meaning has been expressed exclusively by means of Turko-Tajik, where Tajik means Persian or Iranian and nothing else. Tarikh Bayhaqi, or Bayhaqi's history, uses the term of Tajik as a synonym of Persian or Iranian when it explains the involvement of Turkish tribes in Iranian affairs. One of the greatest Russian Orientalists, Academician Bartold, explains the strange cohesion of these two terms, Turko-Tajik, with a logical and historical hypothesis that Iranian tribes have been called Tajik by Turkish nomads, who assumed that the Iranians who brought the Arab faith of Islam to them were Tajiks or Arab as well. Tajik is a Persian equivalent for Arab derived from the name of an Arab tribe, Tai. And in Pahlavi writings we can encounter with the term of Tajik or Tazik. The noun with the same meaning has modified in modern Persian into Tazi, like Zavan Tazi, which means Arabic language, and Aspe Tazi, raven horse, etc. Thus the term of Tajik was not unfamiliar for all Iranians in the entire Iranian plateau, and few centuries ago none of them did mind to be called Tajik, as well as Persian or Iranian. Even nowadays, a Persian speaker in Afghanistan's Herat is regarded as Tajik, and his counterpart in Mashhad, just a few kilometers away in Iran, is considered Persian or Iranian, despite the fact that both of them speak the same language, they've got the same cultural background and everything, but they're called Tajik and Persian, just because of the lines, the political borders. As we can see, this is the matter of borders, actually, which defines our ethnic identity. While we belong to the same Iranian nation, we're divided into Persians and Tajiks. Two synonyms with the same meaning have formed two nations, just in order to satisfy the superpowers of the world and to let them divide and rule. What is precisely the history is the fact that Central Asia have been inhabited by Eastern Iranians since at least the earliest recorded history of the region. What is known as Tajikistan now was part of ancient Persia's Achaemenid Empire, and remained within Persian empires for ages until 16th century, when different Turkic dynasties started dominating over the region, but still Persian, the native language of the native inhabitants of the region, remained as the only official language of all Central Asian dynasties. Tajiks have gone through Mitraism, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Mazdakism, Zarwanism, and Islam, as all other Iranians. However, they kept their closest ties with Zoroastrianism, which is considered as the native religion of Central Asian Iranians, Tajiks. They have fought their fiercest battles in the name of Zoroastrianism, and have come out of many of them victoriously. The first known modern Persian verse is dedicated to one of those victories in Khotalan, what is known as Khatlan in today's southern Tajikistan, when an Arab commander, Qutayba Muslim, returned to Balkh after his disastrous defeat in Khotalan. Iranians in Balkh recited this verse, as Khotalan Ahmadiyya, Baru Tabah Ahmadiyya. Zoroastrians in Bukhara in 8th century resisted and fought for their faith heroically. Qutayba attacked on Bukhara and killed almost all the male population in the city 3 times. Finally, he did not have any other choice rather than hiring mercenaries in all Bukharan houses. The hirelings had to force the rebellious Bukharan families to practice the Islamic rules and rituals, and to name their newborn children in Arabic and to speak Arabic. Central Asian Iranians' strong loyalty to their faith and language made Arab Muslims introduce Islam in Persian. Thus, for the first time, and the last time probably in the history, in 733, a muazzin in Bukhara called Muslim believers to pray in Persian, not Arabic. However, the Arab Muslims' cruelty and brutality did not break the backbone of the Persian civilization in Central Asia. And very soon Bukhara and Samarkand turned into the centers of Persian Islamic civilization, so that even Arab scholars preferred to learn their own religion in those 2 Persian cities. But what is really undeniable is the decline of Zoroastrian culture in the Islamized region of Central Asia, as well as in all other parts of the Iranian plateau. Nevertheless, a plenty of Zoroastrian elements survive behind the high mountains of Central Asia. Let me remind you that just 7% of 143,000 square kilometers of Tajikistan is arable, but the rest consists of the very high Pamirs and Hisar mountain ranges. Especially during the Nowruz season and wedding ceremonies, you can see how really intact and clean have remained some of those elements, like the deep esteem to fire, the colorful culture of dancing, singing, and joy, the deep respect to the truthfulness expressed in a Tajik proverb, Farsi or Rasti, which means being a Persian is equal to being true. And today I hope in the performance called Das spoke Zarathushtra to Ahura Mazda, Das spoke Ahura Mazda to Zarathustra, you can see, and you can see how that Zoroastrian culture is alive in the real Tajik life nowadays. But if you're looking for an adult Zoroastrian-born Behdin in Tajikistan, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. All of Mazdaists or Zoroastrians in Tajikistan have looked for the path of the truth and found it by themselves. They were not born Zoroastrian. If you want to know more about today's Tajikistan, let me say that Ismail Samani, a Persian emperor of the medieval era who ruled over Central Asia during 892 to 914, has replaced Lenin's images and monuments all over the post-Soviet Tajikistan, and the communism peak, the highest peak of the former Soviet Union, which is 7,495 meters, located in Tajikistan, is known now as Ismail Samani's peak. Reputedly, Ismail Samani impeded the brutal process of Arabization in Greater Iran and revived endangered symbols of the Persian civilization as Persian language and culture, including some elements of Mazdaism, the Persian religion, which used to be the main symbol of the Persian statehood. Perhaps these historic details, which are still controversial, caused the Tajik authorities, by trying to create a robust national ideal for Tajiks, to take a keen interest in Zoroastrianism and made them appeal to the international community to commemorate greatness of Asho Zarathushtra's teachings in 2003, last year. Therefore, now we cannot see any sort of oppression against the Nowruz celebrating people in Tajikistan, which was common in all Asian republics of the former Soviet Union before. I think you know that in Soviet Union it was prohibited to celebrate Nowruz, and they considered it even as a sort of Muslim celebration rather than Zoroastrian, because all Muslim nations of Central Asia used to celebrate Nowruz. Noticeably, and they do celebrate it even nowadays, noticeably Prophet Zarathustra and his holy gathers have become objects of rivalry between Tajikistan and Uzbekistan during the process of the competition to master the cultural heritage of the region. Thus we see first Uzbekistan and then Tajikistan making haste to celebrate the so-called 2700th anniversary of Avesta in 2000 and 2001. According to some experts, this date, 2700th anniversary, points out the date of the appearance of the Khwarezmi translation of the holy writings. However, historically both countries located in the heart of the appearance and spreading process of Zoroastrianism and entitled to be proud of it. Soghdiana, currently comprised of western Tajikistan and southern Uzbekistan, was one of the centers of Zoroastrian religion in ancient Iran. And President Imam Ali Rahmanov of Tajikistan, in his book The Tajiks and the Mirror of History, claims that Asho Zarathushtra's homeland is Central Asia. And Zarathustra, who created the immortal Avesta, is the first prophet of Tajiks, whose trace on earth has not been erased by the dust of millennia and the ashes left by countless bloody wars. While admitting that the name, the lifetime of Asho Zarathushtra and the period when he began receiving revelations and speaking as a prophet have been the subject of permanent scientific debate, Mr. Rahmanov insists, judging by the meaning of the name of the prophet Zarathustra, the owner of a yellow camel, we know that there is plenty of other translations and interpretations as well, but this is our president's interpretation, the owner of a yellow camel. We can make a suggestion that he may have lived either in Bactria, comprised of contemporary southern Tajikistan and northern Afghanistan, or in one of the adjoining regions. He strengthens his idea with another historic fact that unique Bactrian two-humped camels had been very popular across the ancient world. Mr. Rahmanov, in his attempt to prove that Asho Zarathushtra has been one of his great ancestors, names a number of provinces given in Vendidad and other parts of Avesta and indicates their possible present location mainly in Central Asia and Afghanistan, like Gava Sugda, which is Soghdiana, Maru, which is Mer in Turkmenistan, Bakhadi, Bakhtar of Bactria, Hirava, Herat in nowadays Afghanistan, Duzak, which is Jizak in contemporary Uzbekistan, etc. After a long enumeration of historic facts, hypotheses, and etymologies, Mr. Rahmanov concludes, these and many other examples give evidence that in every Tajik house we may find trace of Zarathustra's teachings. Let us hope in new millennium the Tajik people will continue to live under the spiritual guidance of Zarathustra, the prophet of truth and light. Mr. Rahmanov's words. Mr. Rahmanov's conclusion is by no means baseless. Tajiks of Tajikistan, hidden behind giant and robust mountains, from numerous incursions of nomadic tribes and nations, have managed to save a whole set of Zoroastrian values and habits. Zoroastrianism has left a deep imprint in their minds. Still, among Tajik, deception is considered as the greatest sin, as I told before, Farsi or Rasti. Being a Persian means being true or truthful. Still, many of them keep a candle alight for 3 days after the death of their relative to gladden her or his fravashi. Still, brides and grooms in Tajik cities and villages spin around a bonfire 3 times, probably mentioning good thought, good words and good deeds. And their mothers pour a handful of white flour on their right shoulders. All Nowruzi traditions of Tajiks remind us of their Zoroastrian roots, and Mehrgan and Sadeh or Sada are not unfamiliar names for Tajiks. The strong attachment of Tajiks to their Zoroastrian past has led some of observers to wrong inference that Tajikistan has got about 5 million followers of Asho Zarathushtra's teachings. While we know that the whole population of Tajikistan is mainly over 6,300,000, something like that. Probably most of them could be called followers of Asho Zarathushtra's teachings practically, but on the other hand, most of them do not consider themselves Zoroastrian and prefer to number themselves among Muslims, although most of them do not practice Islam either. They do not fast, they do not pray in Islamic way, but they consider themselves Muslim. Nevertheless, it does not mean that Tajikistan is deprived of Zoroastrians at all. The first Zoroastrian association in Tajikistan was registered in 1998 under the name of Anjuman Farhangi Zartushtian dar Tajikistan, which is Cultural Association of Zoroastrians in Tajikistan, which was a small circle of Tajik intelligentsia interested in Zoroastrian teachings and principles. Most of its members joined a new, more religious and decisive association established in 2000 by Rudaki Bekdin Samadov. The newly emerged organization called Anjumani Mazdiasna, or Mazdiasna Association, managed to gather a great number of Tajiks who were not only interested in Zoroastrian teachings, but also were very eager to learn how to practice them, how to implement them. Thus, in the same year, we see the first Tajiks committing no-jute or Sedre Pushi ceremonies with assistance of a couple of prominent Zoroastrian thinkers and clerics from Sweden. Probably some of you know who exactly they are, but I don't want to name them because I haven't asked their permission to name them. Mazdiasna's activities upheld by Swedish Zoroastrians started attracting attention of the whole Tajik society. Those activities consisted of conducting Avesta and Pahlavi courses by Professor Dariush Irandoost, and Persian, English, and computer classes by other teachers, holding Persian Zoroastrian celebrations as Nowruz, Mergan, etc. Mazdiasna had a weekly radio program with the same name, Mazdiasna. In addition, the channel, the capital of Tajikistan, to spread Zoroastrian teachings. Mazdiasna even went beyond educational purposes and conducted a series of sport events, including soccer contests among the foreign embassies, ambassadors, and the diplomats in Tajikistan within the framework of 2001 Nowruz festivities and on the occasion of the Avesta celebrations. On the same occasion, Mazdiasna printed the first Tajik Persian, which is Cyrillic Persian. You know that Tajiks speak the same language, the same Persian language, but they write Russian. For example, if I want to write Payambak, I write the same word, but I write not in Persian, but in Russian. Transliteration into Cyrillic. So on the same occasion of Avesta celebrations in Tajikistan, Mazdiasna printed the first Tajik Persian, Cyrillic Persian edition of Holy Gathas in Tajikistan with the assistance of Zoroastrian Assembly in Sweden. Abdurrahim Rahimov, the presidential advisor, took part in its presentation and congratulated all Tajiks with that cultural event. Later, Mr. Rahimov was appointed the Minister of Culture in Tajikistan and soon thereafter murdered in September 2001. Rudaki Bekdin, Mazdiasna's chairman, wrote a play script for a performance called Hayam Zartusht, and now the name has changed to Das Spake Ahur Mazda to Zarathushtra. And Aharun, a well-known Dushanbe theatre, prepared to stage it. Eventually, Aharun succeeded to stage the new version of Zartusht, or Das Spake Ahur Mazda to Zarathushtra, in 2002, almost a year after Rudaki's death. In June 2001, Rudaki Bekdin was at his 39, was shot dead in Dushanbe Street by an unknown man, and the thread of impetuous activities of Mazdiasna cut off. His murder remains unknown. Considering the fact that Islamic radicalism in Central Asia is growing rapidly, Rudaki's activities were extremely courageous. He was acting frankly and appealing the people to convert into Din-e-Behi or Zoroastrianism. He knew that his end was not far away, because a couple of times, even personally, I talked to him. I said that probably is too frank for the contemporary Tajikistan, and he was ready to sacrifice his life on this path, on the path of Asho Zarathushtra. Although he succeeded to attract a great number of Zoroastrian followers among Tajik youngsters and elderly people, his Tajik end frightened and discouraged many of them to go on the path. Nevertheless, his Mazdiasna association is still functioning in Tajikistan and carries out mainly clandestine activities and Zoroastrian propaganda. Despite the fact that the Tajik government seems very sympathetic towards Zoroastrian values and Zoroastrians at all, Tajikistan is not a safe haven for Mazdiasni people yet. Islamic extremism is still posing a threat against the non-Islamic tendencies, especially in mainly Muslim areas. Just a couple of months ago, a booklet has been published in Dushanbe by a local Islamic cleric, Mullah Mosaz Afdarategini, called Quintessence of Zoroastrianism. The book is absolutely unable to explain the quintessence of Zoroastrianism, and it's got absolutely different purpose. And furthermore, tries to defame Mazdaism and to demoralize Zoroastrian believers by claiming that Zoroaster was not a prophet at all. According to his baseless allegations, Asho Zarathushtra was just a semi-philosopher and had nothing to do with holy revelations. This is the first book published in Tajikistan with such an aggressive and hostile approach towards Zoroastrianism. The book has been approved by the head of the country's Muftiyat, the official leader of the Tajik Muslims. The book has caused the deep distress among Tajik Zoroastrians. But still, it is possible to find a Zoroastrian believer almost in all areas of Tajikistan and in many parts of Uzbekistan. The light of Zoroastrian's message is getting through the high mountains by itself without special preaching and reaching Tajiks' hearts and minds. But a bit of attention of Zoroastrians all over the world to their Hamdins in that remote area, which has been considered as a possible homeland of Asho Zarathushtra, definitely could enhance the situation and encourage the people to embrace the light of Zarathustra more eagerly. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, after that very illuminating talk, if you have got any questions to ask the speaker, please raise your hands and ask them.
You mentioned the 11th edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica regarding the definition of Tajik. Can you tell us who signed that article? Because all those articles were signed. Was it Bartolt?
No, it wasn't Bartolt. Britannica?
Yes.
No.
11th edition. It was,
Yeah. I don't remember exactly the author of that article, but it wasn't Bartolt.
And the other point is, how many Yagnavi speakers are there today?
How many?
Yagnavi speakers.
It's a very small minority of linguistical minority in Tajikistan, which is about probably 30,000, 25 to 30,000. And they're located in a very high mountainous area of Tajikistan called Zoroastrian. And they were very small villages. They're, I could say that, isolated from other people in Tajikistan. And most of them came to Dushanbe, to the capital, or went to other parts of Tajikistan. They don't speak Yagnabi at all. And Yagnabi has got two dialects, and both of them are two Soghdian dialects survived in Tajikistan.
And if I can get another one, and Waki speakers.
Waki?
Waki, yes. How many are there?
Yeah, Waki speakers are in Badashan.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's even smaller group than Yagnabi speakers. Probably, I could say a few hundred people. Yeah, can speak Waki.
Same thing for Yazgulami.
Yazgulami, yeah. They're very small. Even Yazgulami is smaller than Yagnabi, but a bit bigger than Waki. Yeah.
Dariush, my question is not very scholarly, but it's a practical one. Although you're quite a young man, you're old enough to have been there working before the disbandment of the USSR. I just wondered how you managed to survive, how you and your ancestors managed to survive during that period where you couldn't profess openly to be Zoroastrians.
And during Soviet Union time?
Yes.
It was actually a very hard time for not only Tajiks but all Soviet people when not only Zoroastrians but all other religions were prohibited. But anyway, I can say that when you prohibit something or don't allow people to do something, it gets even more attractive to them. And it was sort of forbidden fruit for us. I wanted to touch it, wanted to reach it, I wanted to taste it. And I remember during 1980, after the perestroika, Gorbachev's perestroika started in the Soviet Union, most of our magazines in Tajikistan started printing parts of Khord Avesta. For example, Farhang, there's a magazine called Farhang in Tajikistan, printed the whole Khord Avesta. And it was really a very internal desire of Tajiks to go back to their roots. Probably it's the same verse of Maulana Rumi who says that هر کسی که دور ماند از اصل خویش باز جوید روزگاری وصل خویش, which means if you go far away from your roots, one day you'll go back to your roots again. Probably is the proof.
Yes. I've got one comment and one question. First, the comment. You mentioned. I have one comment and one question. I'll go with the comment first. You said some Islamic cleric had said that Zoroaster was a philosopher, not a prophet. That's a contradiction in terms in the sense that Islam has acknowledged that all the Zarathushtis are Ahle Kitabis. Yes? Mm-hmm. Now, coming to the question, it is my understanding that there are some sect called Yazidis who also claim to be Zoroastrian. What is the relationship between the Yazidis and the Tajiks? That's the question.
Mm-hmm. We haven't any Yazidis in Tajikistan. We've got some Yazidis in Azerbaijan, and they're mainly Kurds, Kurdish Yazidis, yeah. And it's a sort of, I could say that I can see a sort of resemblance between Yazidism and Ismailism. Ismailism is an Islamic branch. But anyway, it's got plenty of Zoroastrian values in it, and they've kept them in Badakhshan, in Tajikistan. And Yazidis, they've got plenty of Zoroastrian values in their religion as well, but they're not Zoroastrian. They have nothing to do with this faith anymore. The only thing they've got is just a whole probably set of Zoroastrian values in their religion. And I can't see anything common between Tajiks and Yazidis nowadays. And about what you said about the Ahl Kitab, you said that some Muslims consider that Zoroastrians are Ahl Kitab, which means people who belong to to the books of Revelation. But this is, I think, restricted among Shiite Muslims in Iran mainly. And in Tajikistan and other Sunni countries, they don't respect Zoroastrians as Ahl Kitab. People of Book of Revelation. Yeah, including Tajikistan. Tajikistan Muslims as well.
Do you have any temple as such, like Zoroastrian temple, or gathering places in Dushanbe or any other cities in Tajikistan?
We've got abandoned temples in Tajikistan. They're not functioning nowadays. But I remember in 1998 when we organized the Anjuman Farhangi Zarathushtra Cultural Association of Zoroastrians in Tajikistan, we had a sort of template, a very small temple in the building itself. And still the Anjumani Mazdiasna, which has inherited the first Anjuman, the first association, it's got the same temple, this small temple.
Is there a flame in that temple?
Sorry?
Is there a flame in the temple?
Yeah, there is.
Culturally, what we spoke about keeping fire, Nowruz, Maragan, etc., it's all there in Central Asia. That does not implicate that they are Zoroastrian or they are practicing Zoroastrian or they believe in Zoroastrianism. See, that does not implicate. This is from what you call as my point of view. I went to the first Dushanbe conference on Avesta in 1991, or was it 93? And I tried to find out that was there any practicing Zoroastrian. because I was sent by the SOS to find it out. Whether they had any cultural, not cultural links, but religious links, like did they have any part of Gathas or anything like that, any literature in Avestan or any literature in Soghdiana regards Zoroastrianism. I couldn't find anything. I was there for over 6 weeks.
Do we have a mic?
And I went to several places.
Can you speak a little louder?
So I couldn't find a single practicing Zoroastrian. They all believed in Zoroastrian culture. In fact, on the final day, or a pen-final day, there was some gathering, and Buruk Khan was there as a president for the event, and I offered her that I'll take my shirt off, and I said, can you wear this Sadra and Kusti and declare yourself as a Zoroastrian, because you have organized this Avestan conference. And he said, Zar, I may be naive, but I am not stupid.
Yeah, but it was
she was Ismaili, and she remained Ismaili.
Yeah.
I mean, Dade Khuda, the professor,
Thing,
professor at the Dushanbe University, he himself is an Ismaili.
Now, Dade Khuda Saimuddin was actually, you are talking about 1993?
93 years.
Yeah, and as I told you, the main Zoroastrian activities started in 1998, religious Zoroastrian activities, and people started committing no jute ceremonies or sedepushi ceremonies. And now Dade Khuda Saimuddin, for example, we were talking about, is Zoroastrian. He has committed that ceremony, no jute, and is officially regarded as Zoroastrian. And
how many are there?
I can say exactly I can tell you how many, I mean the exact quantity of the people who are Zoroastrian in Tajikistan, but because it's a growing process, and mainly the Tajik intelligentsia tried to convert into this religion, and I can say approximately that it's about 200 or something like that.
200 people or 200?
No, 200 people.
Sorry, I'd just like to amplify on what the gentleman said. He was there during the Civil War. I remember he went there after I'd come back to my reports of growing Zoroastrian interest in Tajikistan from 1990, 91, 92. I went there 5 times in those years. And I think that it was true that a lot of people were frightened for a very good reason, as they didn't have to pay the price of declaring overtly and practicing overtly what their true beliefs were. And the Civil War was fought precisely between the Islamic factions who wanted to take over Tajikistan, plus some Uzbek nationalists and other issues. But the danger of declaring oneself overtly non-Islamic was very serious at that time, and Tajikistan was in danger of being taken over by an Islamic-style theocracy, as Iran. And that was why many people could not come out very openly and say what they believe. And on the issue of practice, I mean, we have the famous debate, what is Zoroastrianism? Is it just a matter of ritual and practice, or is it belief and sincere practice of the principles and ethics? And for many Iranian Zoroastrians, the ritual and the practice of putting on certain sedra and kushti every day and renewing and doing all those things are not primary important. The important thing is what you believe and do in your life and what your principle is. And of course we have this major division between those who believe in the practice and ritual and define you only if you wear the right clothes and say the right things, and there are others who would welcome you if you are professing to live the life of a Zoroastrian rather than just put a few symbols on your outside. So I would like to just draw that distinction for those who have some difficulty in understanding when we say we're Zoroastrian, we don't necessarily share the same ritualistic elements as some of our co-religionists from different countries. So
exactly,
put that in
there. Now we've got these 2 categories in Tajikistan. For example, I know person was really traditional, or traditionalist and modernist, we can say, among Zoroastrians. He thinks that if I'm not wearing my sedre now, or my kosti, it means that I'm not a Zoroastrian. But there are many other people who really who have committed that ceremony of no jute, but they don't wear neither sedre and no kosti, but they consider themselves Zoroastrian because they've got the I don't know if you know Tajikistan very well, a base located in eastern Tajikistan called Gharm. And the head of that district declared that the district was Zoroastrian, because he said the population of that district were Zoroastrian. But actually this is the main, I can say that the cradle of Islam in Tajikistan is Gharm. But the head of that district named everybody Zoroastrian, wanted to change their religion somehow, but he got killed. We had even that sort of events in Tajikistan.
What's the population of Zoroastrians in Tajikistan?
Yeah, I told just a few minutes ago that we haven't got a definite or precise number of Zoroastrians in Tajikistan, because sort of growing tendency among Tajik intelligence is about 200 approximately. Yeah.
Now, if you said the practices, is it closer to practices of Zoroastrian in Iran or practices in India?
In Iran, yeah. Because the movement who's committed the no-jute ceremony is an Iranian movement. That's why they're followers of the Iranian tradition of Zoroastrianism.
One more question, sorry. You said the existing president is basically promoting Zoroastrianism, is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, the existing presidents that emerged from the Gorbachev reforms, Glasnost and Prostreka, they are the Central Asia. According to the articles I'm reading, they're becoming like dictators of the regions as well. Now, do you think is a danger that you Zarathustrians sleep with him and just promote him and stay with this guy? He's actually becoming a dictator of the region.
I think that
although he's promoting it.
Of course, our president is not one of the best ones in the world, but anyway, I think that he's the best one in the region in terms of democracy. He tries to observe all the democratic values. I mean, comparing with others like Islam Karim for Uzbekistan or Turkmenbashi of Turkmenistan and others. And I think that, of course, he's got some political purposes as well in this promotion of Zoroastrianism. He wants to sort of to put aside or to overshadow the Islamic radicalism in Tajikistan, the Islamic movements, by promoting Zoroastrians and Zoroastrianism. But anyway, I think that we can take an advantage of this, and because we've done plenty of things during these years. We've published gathas, and we even started the Zoroastrian propaganda via the radio of the capital. It was absolutely unimaginable before, but this is now possible in Tajikistan. We can do that.
Yes, yeah. Will you speak up, please?
Did I understand you correctly when you said there was an association or anjuman of Zarathustris in Tajikistan? If that's the case, what are their activities, and how do you keep, it's a vast country, how do you keep the association together in terms of communication, etc.?
For example, now I'm here and we're connected via email, but they can see each other every week, people who remain in Tajikistan. As I told you, the activities of that Anjuman, Mazdiasna Anjuman, the association, is clandestine mainly, because after the death of Rudaki, we thought he was too outspoken, it was too frank, it was too early to do that. Probably we can move a bit slower. And that's why we keep in touch. I keep in touch on a daily basis. Every day I exchange the emails with them, and they can see each other whenever they want to. I mean, there is an association, and it is functioning.
What is the percentage of intelligentsia compared to the total population of the country? When you say intelligentsia, what is the percentage?
Yeah, the percentage is not that big. It's about because the most the biggest part of Tajikistan, the land is rural. It's not urban. About 73% of the land is rural. And that's why you can consider yourself how many there are. It's not that big. I think it's about just 5% of the population, even less. Yeah.
When I was in Tajikistan
Can you
first,
speak up, Shine? Nobody can hear you.
I'm surprised. When I was in Tajikistan for the first time in 1973, which was a long time before most of us realized Tajikistan existed over here, and in fact before the world began to go there, my mother and I only had a few days, and we did not find anything that would indicate that Zoroastrianism was known about in 1973. However, when I went back in 1988 or 89, I already discovered a very, very active intellectual movement, and I've collected and I've shown in other lectures I've given documentation from newspapers, magazines, and journals like Sedai Shah and all kinds of other things that were going on that had information about our religion. Even if it was only Guftarnik and Pendarinik, they had these slogans, they had these mottos. And what led to the awakening of Tajikistan's intellectual intelligentsia to rediscover this history? Or what are your ideas? How did it happen that they discovered it or they got interested in it?
With me, it happened via Shahnameh of Ferdowsi. When I started reading it, I thought that I understood. I realized that we actually were Zoroastrian, and it was the main guide of mine towards Zoroastrianism. But in the whole country, I think things like this, and even the history which was taught in Tajikistan in the Soviet period was a bit of. For example, if the books of history in Tajikistan used to start from Achaemenides and from the description of Zoroastrian religion and things like that. It was probably the main stimulus for most of the people. But reminding the motors had played a very big, major role in this process as well, because the first non-communistic and anti-communistic organization which was formed in Tajikistan in 1989, Rastakhis. It had a slogan or motto, the same slogan, and the first anti-communistic, which was, because communists were ruling the country and everything new or opposition was anti-communistic, and the first anti-governmental newspaper which appeared in Tajikistan was Adalat, where I used to work for as well. And its slogan was the same, and that's why this slogan and the affinity of the people, especially among the intelligentsia and the politicals, it was essential in the people's interest towards Zoroastrianism.
But somebody somewhere must have read, known about Zoroastrianism to start it. How did this happen?
Speak up, Shahpur, please.
Somewhere there must be some knowledge, some book, something about Zoroastrianism to be able to come out suddenly after the collapse of the Russian Empire.
There was a Russian translation of Avesta which appeared in 1989 and was published in Dushanbe by Stephen Kaminsky, who is a professor, aristologist in St. Petersburg in Russia. It was the only book which we had in Russian. And then, as I told you, after the Gorbachev's perestroika, many periodical magazines in Tajikistan started publishing parts or pieces of Avesta, or the whole of the book in Persian.
Where would you have got that from?
Probably from Iran.
Yeah. Also, Stephen Kaminsky translated Mary Boyce's major work on Zoroastrians, their traditions, practice, and history. So, although it's in Russian, all Tajiks speak Russian, so they were accessing that book as well. And hopefully next year we will have Stephen Kaminsky as one of our guest speakers, because he was very instrumental in promoting Zoroastrianism in Russia?
Okay. I think one last question, then that's it, Rumi.
Mine is a controversial question. I'm sorry to ask you this. What happens when you go to India and they don't allow you in a fire temple? I know you practice Zoroastrianism as it should be practiced, whereas most Parsis in India, they just say the prayers in a pit-parrot way, not realizing what they're saying or who they're talking to, and never practice the religion as it should be practiced, as Zarathushtra taught us in practice. Now, how would you react if you went into a fire temple in India or you went into a prayer hall in this country and you were rejected? Sorry,
it's okay.
It's a controversy that I want.
I think that I've got a very rebellious nature, and I think that I'll try to change it by some people in the community, in India or wherever it is, because I think that this is the main obstruction towards the spreading of Zoroastrian religion all around the world.
The thing is, you consider that going to a fire temple in India is essential. Forget about India. You are not Indian. India would have been. People from, if you really think about it, think deeply. I am writing a book about the origins of Parsis, which is completely different from the Zoroastrians. The Zoroastrians of the West should forget about India. I mean, let's pick Zoroastrians of Iran are there. In Shahpur, the head priest of Shahpur, he said, I am not wearing sadra and kusti. Right? I'm not wearing it now. He met me in Dushanbe, he said, I'm not wearing, and I'm a head priest. So this is a different practicing thing. If you really want, create a fire temple on your other places where you can, say, because in India, they've got this restriction, and they are right in a way. Suppose in India, they say anybody can become Zoroastrian. Then there are lots and lots of economic flats, etc., you know. There are 11 crores, that means 110 million untouchables. Now, these untouchables, they were called, or Dalits, they were supposed to, they can become Zoroastrians immediately. There's a potential, because they can become, most of them are now becoming Buddhist. To change their identity, they're becoming Buddhist. So forget about India. There's a different, these are Parsis who have done for economic reasons.
But I think that if we want to avoid from extinction, we have to forget traditionalism, and I think that it's just outdated.
You know, it's not, it will be outdated in India. In next 100 years, there will be no Parsis left in India. Be assured.
Can we?
Can I? Sorry, I do object in the sense what is being said that let's forget about India. There are hundreds and thousands of Dalits who will join the Parsi. I see personally no objection in that. There are hundreds and thousands South Indians became Christians, and that's how the Christianity spread. Christianity wasn't a big religion, so it spread. So if hundreds and thousands of Dalits become Zoroastrian, I will be over pleased, and then to take them in my fold and direct them to the right path which they need.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the morning session. It remains for me. No, this session, sorry, this first session I meant. It remains for me to thank Dariush on behalf of yourself and myself and WZO for a wonderful talk and a wonderful question-answer session. Thank you very much.